forward. My propitious meeting with Karl D. Wiggins on a late autumn afternoon a few years ago will be forever etched in my memory. Earlier in the day, my sister had discovered a young pit bull running loose in a Walmart parking lot near an area that was filled with 18-wheelers. Being an avid animal lover, she was concerned the pup would be run over. She'd spent some time trying to locate the owner, aided by one of the truck drivers parked there. Unable to locate the owner, she left her contact information with the manager at Walmart, loaded the dog into her car, and took it home. A couple hours later, the manager called with news that the owner, a driver for Prime Incorporated, had been found. My sister talked to the dog's distraught owner, and they made arrangements for her to take the dog back to the parking lot where she'd found it. I accompanied her on the ride back into town. As my sister and I stepped out of her car in anticipation of returning the dog to its owner, the man who had earlier tried to help locate the owner, also a Prime driver, suddenly appeared with his camera and began taking pictures of the joyous reunion between the dog and its owner. It truly was a camera-worthy event. When we asked if he was a photographer, he said, "Yes, my name is Karl Wiggins, and I'm a writer too." My sister replied, "Well, that's interesting. My sister here is an editor." At this announcement, Karl looked at me and said, "Wow, I've been looking for you." Then after a moment, he continued, "Well, I'm not really a writer. In fact, I haven't really had much education, but I'll promise you one thing, I can tell a story." With that, he asked me to follow him to his truck, where he climbed up into the driver's seat and bid me follow partway up the steps. I could see his laptop propped against the steering wheel. As I stood on the top step, hanging onto the door for support, he said, "Here, let me read you this story I'm working on." With that, he proceeded to read a portion of one of the stories that appears in this book. The truck slid to a stop, huffing, puffing, choking, hiccuping, coughing, and gasping like a chain-smoking emphysema patient. As the truck began to appear from the cloud of dust, we watched it shimmy and shudder like a big red dog shaking water from its coat. It eyed us suspiciously as it danced a death jig to the violent rod knocks and backfires. I was mesmerized. I remember thinking, "Wow, that is really good. I wonder where he found it." Sorry, Karl, but at that time, after you'd told me you'd been a high school dropout, I couldn't help but wonder if it had been plagiarized. We exchanged email addresses, and I invited him to send me some of his stories. He did. And any questions I may have had about him being the real author immediately vanished. I knew that, as he likes to say, he is the real deal. Thus began our journey together as author and editor. Over the years, that has morphed into friendship and respect. Karl's stories are of his journey through life, beginning with some of his earliest memories in this book. They range from poignant to heart-wrenching to painfully honest, often filled with contagious humor, and always with such vivid descriptions the reader has no problem feeling the scene. This book, the first of a series, covers the time from his earliest memories to his late teenage years. Future books will progress through Karl's various experiences, including rocky, dramatic, sometimes hair-raising, but always entertaining stages of his life, culminating with his survival, overcoming long odds, ending with some of his life's successes and the final book of the series. By the time you finish reading this book, you will eagerly look forward to the continuation of his life's saga, and you will agree with me that Karl D. Wiggins is a writer and storyteller par excellence. Joe Massey Johnson, editor. Introduction. I really admire Jack's acting skills, and nobody does intense better than Jack Nicholson. The film A Few Good Men climaxes during a courtroom scene where Tom Cruise, playing the part of a young military prosecutor, has finally gotten to the salty old colonel with his intense questioning about whether or not the colonel had ordered a code red. The prosecution demands the truth, and finally the old colonel cannot take it anymore. He stands up in the witness box and explodes, delivering the famous line, "The truth? You want the truth? You can't handle the truth." Well, that is my question to you, the reader. Do you want the truth? Can you handle the truth? If you hesitate in answering, then this is not the book for you. Because over the course of this series, I am going to smash you right in the fucking face with fists full of truth and shower you with confetti of lies, defeats, successes, failures, sticky, funny, clean, nasty, filthy, survival, violence, hope, sex, drug-crazed dysfunction, peace, mental illness, life, death, dreams, depression, rainbows, suicide, love, hate, incarceration, masturbation, moral, immoral, satirical drag queens, crime scenes, midgets, mushrooms, maniacs, UFOs, truck stop hoes, and road stories that are going to kick your ass. I shit you not. This storytelling buffet, this smorgasbord of smash-mouth story sandwiches will make Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas look like a slice of dry white bread lying on a cheap white paper plate. Prologue. In the beginning there was light. That light was love. That love was my mother. If memories of my mother were marbles, then all of mine could be held in the palm of a small child's hand. Like an aged black and white snapshot in the family album, I see a small child. He is bundled, stuffed, and puffed like a starfish into his winter clothes. His dark eyes stare back at me from under the hood of his coat. His arms stick out from his sides, his hands bound in mittens, his short legs are planted in black rubber boots. The black and white memory of leaving California and his mother behind on a long train ride to Kansas are frozen in his eyes. Years later, now a teenager, I smoked and thought about my father. My feelings were a mixture of anger, hatred, confusion, and sadness. I smoked and reflected on why I'd left home in the first place. The sound of a straining diesel motor brought me back from the memory of how I'd ended up there on the side of the road. I raised my arm and stuck my thumb out. Thus began my journey toward manhood. Chapter 1. In the beginning. For some reason, I remember the ride from California as a train ride, but it may have been a bus. I was picked up and taken to my Uncle Ray's house, where my cousins, Maggie and Gloria, walked me down the crunchy, white snow-covered path and into the warmth of Grandma's house. My cousins fawned over me and delighted in my telling a story about jelly spiders from an Edgar Allan Poe movie I had just seen. This grainy, scratched black and white memory is all I have left from that night. Winter faded to spring, and the ringing sleigh bells from the horse-drawn ice cream wagon brought the long, hot days of summer, where we bought popsicles, played and stomped around in mud puddles, and caught tadpoles. In the fall, I was enrolled and started kindergarten and learned to ride a bike. Freeze frame. I'm standing behind my grandpa Otis, both of us eating the forbidden red-hot candies he kept hidden in the bookcase right behind the Encyclopedia Britannica. Grandpa was a diabetic. Grandma would have thrown a fit if she'd caught us sneaking the candy. But we were sweet co-conspirators and kept our secret hidden very well. I would stand behind him on the couch as we ate the Red Hots and comb his hair with an old tortoiseshell hairbrush while we watched the Lawrence Welk show. One thing I will never forget about living at my grandpa's house was the smell of his pancakes. Grandpa's pancakes were about an inch thick and as big around as the black cast iron skillet he cooked them in, and he served them smeared with butter and Smucker's grape jam. I remember coming home from school one day to find a gift-wrapped present from my mom. I remember begging and crying to open it, but I was told I couldn't open it until after dinner. I cried my eyes out until dinner time, and then could only choke down a few mouthfuls in between stuttering sobs. Finally, I was allowed to open the present. I tore off the wrapping paper and, oh my God, it was an army set. There was an army machine gun and a camouflage army poncho and an army helmet with plastic camouflage sticking out the top and a plastic canteen on a belt. I loved playing army more than anything in the whole world, and I would stalk through Grandpa's orchard fighting the Japs. My cousins and I often played army using my grandpa's old Diamond T truck as our command vehicle. I even had a winter coat that kind of looked like an army jacket. Years later, my Aunt Barbara told me that I'd sneak it out of the house and wear it even on hot summer days. One day that summer, after the end of the school year, my mother showed up. It was the happiest day of my life. I remember waking up with her on the couch the next morning. I remember getting up and going to the kitchen to look on the table because every morning my Uncle Elwood would leave a Liberty Head dime for me. I would take the dime and run up the path to my Uncle Ray's mechanic's garage and buy a bottle of pop. I can still smell Gojo hand cleaner and grease and hear the static crackle of his ham radio as he worked on cars. Uncle Ray would always greet me with a, "Hey, Karl, do one," which was a play on my middle name, Dwayne. The other memory I have of my mother being there was of my dad chasing her with the garden hose and spraying her until she escaped into the house. The next memory I have is of living in a small gray house in North Lawrence, Kansas. I was in first grade at Woodlawn Elementary School. My best friend in school was a black kid named Grady. I remember us getting into trouble one time for laughing in class because I'd drawn a picture of the teacher with a big snotty booger hanging out of her nose. For me, it's usually colors that flash me back to memories of that little gray house. Certain shades of blue, red, and yellow will flash me back to the park that was across the street from the little gray house. Mounted on big coiled springs were the red hippo, the yellow duck, and the blue pig. The merry-go-round platform was divided like a pie, each slice painted the same particular colors as the duck, hippo, and pig. It was beat up and tilted, and there was nothing more fun than seeing how fast it could go, then stepping off to try to walk. I remember my mother waking me up one morning and rushing to get me ready for school because she'd overslept. She dressed me in black slacks and a white button-up shirt. Then she sent me out the door with these words, "Hurry now, and run your little legs off." One night as I lay on the couch watching the Andy Griffith Show, my dad and mom began fighting. My dad was yelling, and my mom was crying. At some point, my dad called me in the bedroom and asked me, "Who do you want to stay with, me or your mom?" I answered, "Both." I remember very clearly the room was in disarray. The bottom drawer had been removed from the dresser, and lying on the floor under where the bottom drawer was supposed to be was a rifle. The next thing I remember is being in a car in the driveway with my brother and an old cat we had adopted. The cat's name was Balls because, well, he had great big balls. Memories flicker and stutter as I remember our mother calling us to come in from the car. She stood in the doorway, backlit by the kitchen light, one hand holding the screen door open. Her hair was wild, and she was wearing a quilted shabby housecoat that she held together with the other hand. I remember walking towards her, climbing the steps, and walking into the kitchen. It was trashed. Clothes and newspaper pages and other garbage were strewn about. I remember one thing in particular, the big Hi-C orange drink can on the floor amongst the trash. After that memory of walking into the kitchen that night, I have nothing of my mother. It's a total blackout. The next thing I remember was living at my Uncle Jim and Aunt Barbara's house with their 6 children. I do not have any memories of trauma or feelings of loss or anything. Life went on as if nothing had ever happened. I don't even remember knowing my mother had died. No one said a fucking word to me about her death, or gave me any little memento or anything. No pictures, nothing. It was like she'd never existed. Later, as I grew older, I used to wonder what had happened to her stuff. Everyone has stuff. Like she must have had earrings, or rings, or bracelets, a watch, clothes, a scarf, something. But there was nothing. Over the years, I'd hear rumors and whispers about the mysterious circumstances surrounding my mother's death. I heard all kinds of stories over the years. The worst was what I heard from a cousin recently. "We all knew your dad killed her." Well, that's fucking great. But no one said shit to me about this as I was growing up. 52 years later, I don't know any more now than I did then, and that is fucking sad. My mother's name, let alone anything about her or her family, were never spoken in our house. I was in my late 40s before I became reacquainted with the daughter of my dad's brother, who became my favorite cousin. Because she was so much older than me, I called her Aunt Jane. In my effort to collect information, I once asked her, did I even know my mom had died? Aunt Jane said, "Oh yes, honey, you knew." She went on to explain that after the funeral that we 3 children were denied attending, the relatives who attended had come home only to find that I was missing. Jane told me she was the one who found me. She'd found me out behind my grandpa's oat barn sitting on his old tractor. Jane said, "Karl Dwayne, when I saw you sitting up there, you had the biggest, saddest blue eyes I'd ever seen." Aunt Jane eventually uncovered a few treasures that had been hidden in relatives' attics for over 40 years. My dad's sister, my Aunt Doris, produced a handwritten letter from my mom that had been sent from California to her when I was a baby. There was also some kind of cloth Marine Corps memento that my dad had sent to my mom while he was stationed in Cuba, and a pair of earrings she was supposed to have been wearing when she was buried. How Aunt Doris got them, I have no idea, but, bless her heart, she'd saved them and eventually gave them to Aunt Jane to give to me. With my Aunt Jane's help, I spent the next few years hunting down more clues and looking for answers. Aunt Jane also tracked down my mother's sister, Shirley, an aunt I never knew existed. Jane contacted her and asked her if she would meet with me. A few weeks later, I did meet with her, and she was the meanest lady I ever met. The meeting did not last long, and I wasn't sure it had been worth it. The first thing Aunt Shirley said as we sat down at her table there in her farmhouse was that there were things I should know but wouldn't want to hear. I passionately disagreed and told her of my journey to uncover the truth, and I pleaded with her to tell me. She refused. I thought, well, you fucking bitch. Then why did you even bother to say anything at all? I was pissed. The first meeting was very brief, and I left angry and confused. Aunt Jane and I scheduled another meeting, but I insisted on Jane going with me. This meeting went better, and Shirley warmed up to me a little. After I heard her stories, I came to understand why she was such a hard woman. But her refusal to give up the secret, I cannot forgive. Aunt Shirley had a limited education. She'd married early and had had several children. Later in life, her husband discovered he had a terminal illness and committed suicide, leaving Shirley with a mortgage and mouths to feed. She had returned to school late in life and earned her high school diploma. She did not stop there. She went on to become a para-engineer and had worked for the Kansas Department of Transportation until she retired. She lived on the farm until her death a few years ago. But I will never understand her keeping information about my mother from me. And that has been the way it has always been. Rumors, speculation, people hinting but not wanting to talk. At least once I've heard that they all knew all along that my dad had killed her. Great. But we children, her children, were denied the entire grieving process, robbed of any participation in the funeral, and everything she was, everything she had owned, every detail of her life, what her favorite color was, or what her dreams were, or what foods she liked best, were swept up like so much trash and thrown into the river, along with the rifle she was shot with. The story goes like this. During a heated argument, my mother stormed out of the house with the rifle and went behind the car and shot herself in the stomach, where my father found her some time after. My father had then called an ambulance and my mom was rushed to the hospital. He'd followed shortly after, but not before he stopped and threw the gun into the Kansas River from the bridge. Why he did that is still a mystery, but throwing the gun into the river just screams guilty to me. From all accounts, my mother survived for 3 days in ICU. Going through therapy after I was released from prison, my shrink took me to Lawrence, Kansas, and we secured her death certificate and a short article from the Lawrence Journal World about the shooting. I did note that the article stated that she died from gunshot wounds, plural, to the stomach. My mother died in ICU when the nurse had stepped out. While the nurse was out, my mother threw up, started choking, and went into cardiac arrest. They could not save her. They could not save us, her children, either.